Okay, this is another episode of the Deep Dive on Starseed Films, where you get the breakdown of the best books, materials, and works of the great minds in the realm of metaphysics, Eastern mysticism, holistic medicine, and universal spirituality. We pack it all in for you so you don't actually have to read the full material.
Yep, we take the golden nuggets out of the material and give you the core principles, and we talk about it and find the overall message that you can take from it and apply it to your life or not. It's up to you. We talk about it, you listen, and take it or leave it.
And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us get these truths out there to everyone and make a difference.
Yeah, change the world.
Ever get that feeling, that underneath all the different beliefs, all the philosophies, there's maybe one fundamental truth just waiting to click. Like different traditions are pointing towards the same thing, but you can't quite connect the dots.
That feeling is, well, it's pretty common, I think. That search for a unifying principle, it really drives a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of the territory we're exploring today on the deep dive. We're looking at this really interesting book, The Keys to God Consciousness by Michael Perlin.
Right.
And it's not just like one person's opinion. It's more of a collection, bringing together wisdom from all sorts of spiritual masters, philosophers, across history.
Think of it like a summit across time, maybe. You get these echoes of similar ideas from really diverse voices. It's a great way to see where the common ground might lie in all this spiritual thought.
And for you listening, our goal here, our mission with this deep dive is really to give you a focused look at this collection. So instead of having to wade through, countless different texts, we want to pull out the key themes, specifically the ones about our connection to something bigger. The divine, you could say.
Trying to offer a path to that understanding without the overwhelm.
Exactly.
We're aiming to distill what Perlin's put together, focusing on those recurring ideas about our basic relationship with, well, a reality that goes beyond just us as individuals.
Now, Michael Perlin himself, his own path into this is pretty interesting. He was driven by this real personal curiosity, about our place in it all.
Right.
And he was really drawn to thinkers like Alan Watts and Ernest Holmes. We'll definitely hear more from them.
Yeah.
But he talked about this sort of inner nudge, like a calling, he said, to gather these truths together.
And that impulse, that desire to synthesize and share, it's a deeply human thing, isn't it? Wanting to find meaning and coherence.
Yeah.
And the fact that he dedicates the book to anyone on a spiritual path, whatever their background, that really highlights this kind of inclusive, unifying aim.
Absolutely. And just to give you a sense of the range here, we're talking figures like Adi Shankaracharya from ancient India.
A key figure in Advaita Vedanta, yeah. Non-duality.
Right. Then you've got the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, Alan Watts, of course, Buddha, Jesus, the Sufi mystic Rumi. The list goes on.
And it's just a few. The book organizes them by author, which is helpful.
It lets you appreciate each voice, but then you also start seeing these big themes pop up when you see them all together.
Exactly. That's where the real power of a collection like this lies.
So the central theme, the core idea we're digging into today, is this really powerful concept that Perlin highlights, that humanity and the divine aren't separate, that they're like fundamentally one, that deep down our souls have this spark of divinity. Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. How does the book show this recurring idea of oneness?
Well, what's really striking is how consistent this thread seems to be. You look across all these different spiritual traditions, sometimes separated by centuries or continents, and there's this shared emphasis.
On what specifically?
On a divine essence that isn't out there somewhere, but is actually part of us, intrinsic to all beings, this idea that we're all interconnected, part of one big whole.
And the book brings up mysticism as sort of a key way to grasp this unity, right?
Yeah, Perlin's work suggests that if you really look at the original mystical teachings, the sort of experiential heart of different religions, you find this shared core.
So mysticism being about that direct personal experience of the divine.
Yeah.
Beyond just doctrine.
Precisely. It's that felt sense of connection, of union, something you experience rather than just think about.
Okay, so traditions like Sufism in Islam.
Right, or Vajrayana Buddhism, Brahmanism and Hinduism, Gnosticism, Kabbalism and Judaism.
All these paths that often stress that direct connection over maybe the more institutional side of things.
Exactly. They often focus on inner work, contemplation, practices designed to cultivate that direct relationship. And that naturally leads towards a sense of oneness, not separation.
And the book touches on something interesting, how maybe religious institutions, perhaps without meaning to, might have actually contributed to a feeling of separation from this divinity.
That's a really important question the book kind of raises. It suggests that while religions offer guidance and community, which is valuable,
Sure.
sometimes the structures themselves might create this perceived gap between the individual and the divine, which contrasts with that direct spiritual sense of oneness that the mystics talk about.
And Perlin even connects this lack of understanding our interconnectedness,
Yeah.
connects it to some big global problems we face.
Yeah, he really believes that a lot of the big issues, war, inequality, environmental problems, stem from us fundamentally not getting our shared divine nature, our oneness.
Yeah.
His thinking is, if we truly felt that oneness, would we really want to harm or exploit each other or the planet? Probably not.
Okay, right. This is where the voices in the book become so powerful. Let's dive into some of their specific insights on this, starting with Adi Shankaracharya.
Okay. Shankaracharya, central to Advaita Vedanta, he really hammered home this idea of pure consciousness. Atman being the same as Brahman, the ultimate reality.
Right.
He saw the idea of being separate as the fundamental illusion, basically.
And the book quotes him saying things like, "You are not the body, not the mind. You are pure consciousness."
Yeah.
Wow, that directly challenges our usual sense of self.
It really does. And his big statement, Brahman is the only truth, the world is illusion. No difference between Brahman and Atman. That sums it up perfectly.
So what we see as us and the world isn't actually separate from the divine source.
That's the core idea. It's all one underlying reality.
Okay. Then there's Alan Watts.
Yeah.
He just had this knack for making complex ideas feel accessible.
Oh, absolutely. Watts used these brilliant metaphors. The book includes that famous one. We do not come into this world, we come out of it as leaves from a tree.
I love that one. It just clicks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it instantly shifts your perspective. You're not an alien arriving here, you're an expression of here.
Right.
He also said, every individual is an expression of the whole realm of nature, a unique action of the total universe. Again, reinforcing that our individuality isn't apart from the whole, it's a manifestation of it.
Okay. And Buddha. We often hear about emptiness, but the book points to his emphasis on interdependence too.
Definitely. The quote included is, all things appear and disappear because of the concurrence of causes and conditions. Nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else.
So no truly separate existence, everything connected.
That's the Buddhist perspective in a nutshell. Interconnectedness is key.
And that simple phrase, peace comes from within. How does that fit?
Well, in many traditions, that inner peace is seen as what happens when you align with your true nature, that unified core, instead of looking for peace out there in a world you see as separate and often conflicting.
Makes sense. Now, how does the book bring Jesus' teachings into this theme of oneness?
It highlights a few key things. That idea of the kingdom of God within you is central.
Right. Suggesting the divine isn't distant, but right here, inside.
Exactly. And then, of course, that incredibly powerful statement, I and the Father are one.
A direct claim of unity.
A profound one. The book also pulls in that line from Colossians about Christ being all and is in all, which again speaks to this pervasive divine presence everywhere in everything.
And Rumi, the Sufi poet, his words just seem to drip with that mystical connection.
Oh, his imagery is amazing. The book shares that famous line, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop.
Wow, yeah, that just flicks everything. Our usual sense of being small and insignificant.
Completely. It's such a beautiful way to say that the entire potential and essence of the divine is right there within each individual. Like every drop contains the whole ocean's nature.
The book also mentions others briefly, Ernest Holmes, Ramana Maharshi, various mystics. Is the message basically similar from them?
You definitely hear strong echoes of the same core themes. That inherent divinity within us, the idea that separation is an illusion, and this fundamental unity behind everything.
Different words, different metaphors, maybe.
Exactly. Different language, different cultural contexts, but the underlying message of oneness just keeps coming through. It's quite remarkable.
And Michael Perlin himself adds some of his own reflections, drawing on all this.
Yes, he offers this really interesting practice. Try reading spiritual texts, but wherever you see me or I, substitute the word God.
Huh. What's the idea behind that?
He suggests it can unlock deeper meanings and really drive home that sense of our own inherent divinity. It's a perspective shift. He also talks about love, not just as personal affection, but as this all-inclusive principle.
That exercise of swapping me for God seems like a pretty direct way to engage with these ideas.
It really is a way to personalize it. Perlin also makes this point about religion versus spirituality. He says something like, religion is taught, spirituality is not. When you figure that out, you will like your life a lot.
So spirituality is more about that inner realization, that direct knowing.
That seems to be his point. It's not just learning concepts, it's realizing the oneness.
And he talks about the Great Awakening differently too, doesn't he? Not as some big future event, but something more personal happening now.
Exactly. For him, the real Great Awakening is the happiness, the quiet joy that comes when you realize your oneness with God, right here, right now.
It's an inner shift in how you see things.
Precisely. Not waiting for something external, but waking up to the reality that's already present.
And circling back to what you mentioned earlier, he really sees this understanding of oneness as vital for tackling the world's problems.
Absolutely fundamental. He argues that recognizing our interconnectedness, our shared divinity, is the key. If we got that, truly got it, things like war, prejudice, exploitation, they'd start to dissolve. The motivation wouldn't be there in the same way.
Now, Perlin also made a film, Three Magic Words. The book mentions it. How does that connect?
Right, the film is basically a visual and auditory companion to the ideas in the book.
Oh, okay.
It explores divine connection, oneness, through interviews with various teachers and thinkers. The book notes it was well received and reached a lot of people, and also gives credit to Maura Hoffman for her role in making it happen.
So it's another way he's trying to get this message out there and make it accessible.
Exactly. A different medium, maybe more immediate for some people to connect with these big ideas.
Okay, so thinking about you, our listener, what are the practical takeaways here? I mean, how could grasping this idea of inherent divinity, of interconnectedness, actually change how you live day to day?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, isn't it? If you start to truly internalize this, that you're not just this separate self, but woven into everything, and that there's this divine spark within you, well, it has to change how you see yourself, right? And how you see others and the world.
It really makes you pause and think. How would that deep knowing influence your choices, your empathy, your sense of responsibility?
Exactly. It fosters a much more compassionate, connected view. Maybe think about your own life for a second. Have you ever had those moments, maybe out in nature or connecting with someone, where you felt that deep sense of belonging, of connection?
Yeah, those fleeting feelings.
Well, this perspective offers a way to understand those moments, not as just random feelings, but as glimpses of a fundamental truth about reality.
Wow. Okay. This has been quite the journey into some deep waters. If we were to boil it all down, what's the main takeaway from our look at Perlin's The Keys to God Consciousness?
I think the core message, the one that echoes again and again through all these different voices, is this profound idea that we are connected to the divine, and because of that, connected to each other.
And the separation we usually feel.
That's presented as the illusion, an illusion we can wake up from by realizing our true unified nature.
Well, for you listening, we really hope this deep dive has given you a useful, sort of condensed look into this incredibly rich topic.
Yeah, these are huge ideas, things people have explored for centuries. Hopefully this gives you a good starting point.
We tried to offer a way into this perspective without you having to read dozens of books right off the bat.
A pathway, hopefully.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. If this wisdom we've talked about today does hold a fundamental truth, how might really understanding that reshape your daily life?
Yeah.
Your interactions, your choices?
Yeah.
What if that feeling of being separate isn't the final word? What if it's just an illusion waiting for you to see through it?
It's definitely a question worth sitting with, an invitation to explore within yourself.
Absolutely. And if you do want to explore more, you can look for Michael Perlin's book, The Keys to God Consciousness, and also his film, Three Magic Words. Both offer more ways to dig into these fascinating ideas.